this has nothing to do with nuclear weapons. So I think this is all about weakening Iran to the extent that it's not going to pose a sort of a more significant threat to the state of Israel. I mean, this is a grave concern from China's perspective, but also a perspective from, for example, Japanese and South Koreans. We are the world's pretty much largest oil importers. We're industrialized nations and manufacturing powerhouses. We all rely on oil, and we can't stand this very high level of oil price for extended period of time. And that's why, the Chinese government has come out and said that this thing has to stop. I think one thing I do want to point out is that whether the Iranian government's position on entirely closing down the Strait of Hormuz is never clear to me. I mean, there's some reports saying that it wants to do that, and other reports saying that Iranian foreign ministers come out and say we didn't want to do that. So I think this is sort of in a fuzzy area, but I think it does. The de facto status here is that ships are indeed afraid of crossing the strait, and this imposes profound implications on for many economies around the world, and we can't stand this thing going on forever. Yeah, well, I'm guessing here that the United States is pretty careful about not hitting Iranian oil and refinery-related facilities, and I think the Tehran side has been making this very clear that if these facilities are being hit, they will retaliate by hitting practically every oil-related facility in the Middle East, and that's going to wreak havoc on the world economy. So hopefully we don't go down that path, and I hope President Trump is going to walk out of this after he has got enough bombing of Iran. Your previous question to the previous guest was asking about what's the real purpose here. I think, President Trump's stated purpose is for regime change based on the idea that Iranian people are going to rise up and topple its government. I think that's a far-fetched imagination. It's not going to happen. And I think, to settle for something less than that would be a much, much weakened Iran. That's probably in President Trump's mind. This has nothing to do with nuclear weapon. We know that it's already buried somewhere in some mountain, underneath the mountain. Iran is nowhere getting close to developing some capability related to nuclear weapons. So I think this is all about weakening Iran to the extent that it's not going to pose a sort of a more significant threat to the state of Israel. And I think he can walk out. I think President Trump is totally capable of doing something like that. He can easily find a way to declare victory and walk away from this and say, we have done enough. And there's not a thing Iranian side can do with respect to Americans. But the Iranian side, of course, is going to continue their war with Israel. But, I think America at least can walk away like it did in the conflict in Ukraine. And now, it's going to be a mess between Iranians and Israelis about this. So I think this is probably my conjecture with respect to the trajectory of things happening right now.